Hello, it is Wednesday, April 27th, 2022 at 6:19 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. This is my video journal. I might get interrupted with a phone call from a hair salon. I do need a haircut bad, so I might interrupt this. But this is my video journal. It's my criminal and mental health history in my words, not able to glean from police reports and medical records. This is my version. So, talked about my first trip to Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic in Oakland, neighborhood of Pittsburgh, when I was forcibly brought back from Denmark, escorted by police and various paramedic. They did, and I believe what happened was I was injected twice at the Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic with Haldol in my butt cheek. I believe the first time I was in there, right out when I came from the airport, I refused to take medication for 4 or 5 days, and they did a force med protocol on me. That's where 3 men dressed in all black, security guard type people, come into the living area. They wanted to come into my room. I said no. I said I'll come out there and get the injection. I just want it to be known that I hate needles, and I yelled that. I said I hate needles, and then I bent over a table and let the nurse inject me with Haldol. After that, I took the medication, even though I think I cheeked it that first time around and spit it out. So then I got to come home I was home for 3 days. They released me eventually. I had a hearing in Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic, which I don't agree with. I think you should have to be taken to a courthouse to have a hearing. They were able to do it in a conference room right there. 302 hearing, where family members said I should be in there. I said some stuff about Chris Christie, and it was all recorded, stuff I wanted to get on record. Later I was taken down to the courthouse downtown Grant Street, and in the orphans court the judge heard my recording and ordered me released. So the public defender that was there, I wanted my recording to be released to the press, but he wouldn't do a motion for that. He said, you just won your case, take a win and get out of here. So I was released. I walked home because I said I was going to take a bus. I drug all my luggage and everything home. My parents and my wife were waiting for me. I yelled at my dad to get out of my house, to get off the curtilage of my property, to cross the street. I yelled him out. My wife gave me space. She stayed with her aunt, so I was pretty much home alone most of the time. I never went and got my prescription filled. Never started taking the medication. My wife would come to the house in the mornings to get ready for work, crawl in bed with me, and try to snuggle with me because I had been gone for 4 months. Other than that, she gave me my space. I proceeded to believe that I made multiple trips to the library, the Carnegie libraries, different libraries, especially the one in Homewood. Accessed my website and wanted to check in with my website after being locked up, and it's one of the first things I did. In fact, I had my wife drop me off at a library in the Hill District while she was going to her aunt's the one evening. Then I walked all the way back from there, checked on my website because I believed it was being isolated or whatever. The Plot M website. I checked it from various locations. Also accessed the database, the CIA database, to check in on that. So I went back to using the computers again, like I did in Denmark. Then around the third day, I was in a state of psychosis again. The satellite might have been sending a signal onto this property again. I believed I was doing experiments on the stove, testing rocket technology. I started stacking things because I believed the satellite could see through the layers of my house. Flipped over the dining room table and tried to make an obstacle course for my cat. I was doing all kinds of weird experiments in my house. I was drinking. My brother came and visited me. He had a new truck. It had a Mason symbol on the back of it, a sticker. I said, "You're not a Mason." I asked for a ride to the library, and when I saw his truck, I said, "You're not a Mason. What's that doing on there?" He said, "I don't know. It was on the truck when I bought it." I said, "Well, I'm not riding up front. I'll ride in the back." He wouldn't drive me to the library in the back of his truck through the middle of the city. I don't blame him. I got in a little altercation with him, a little argument, and I said, "If you marry a Catholic, we may have to pistol duel in New Orleans." This is because of my feelings about Ken Bryan, the Catholic. At one point during some of my psychosis, I said he was a drug dealer and a child pornographer or something like that to my dad. I confused the hell out of him. I did believe that Ken was a drug dealer. He gave my brother muscle relaxants for his back. My brother has a bad back, so I believe Ken was selling drugs, muscle relaxers, to people, which he did give it to my brother. I guess he didn't sell them. Mental illness is a hell of a thing. Anyhow, my brother left. Later that day, him and my wife got together. I was supposed to have dinner with my wife, but I forgot. Went to the library over in Homewood. Got material to make a po' boy on the way home from the fish and chicken place. Walked all the way back, was late for dinner. In the meantime, my wife and my brother had signed a 302 against me to recommit me to Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic. When I got home, shortly after I got home, before I could make my po' boy, the police came to my door, knocked on the door. I didn't open the outside screen door. I showed them my passport. They didn't care. They came into the house. I backed up into the dining room. I asked if they could see the hologram on my passport. I believe that when people are hacked, their brains are hacked, they can't see the holograms and stuff, and they have visual hallucinations and things like that. So I was trying to use my passport as a tool to see if they were actual living, breathing humans or some kind of replicant hacked people in uniform. They put my shoes on me, got me in the vehicle, took me to Western Psych. When I got there, I said, "I'm not going upstairs. You're going to have to figure out how to get me up there." And I sat in the lobby area all night. Doctor came and talked to me. He talked to me, and then it sounded like he was talking to himself, like he was having a conversation in his head, like he could telepathically hear voices in his head, because he was talking to me and then he stopped talking and just talked to himself. It was strange. It proved my point that these telepathic wireless waves are in even the upper echelons of the medical community. I said, "I'm not going up there." Eventually, early in the morning, the goon squad, as I call them, the men in black that are the security and henchmen of the institute and clinic, came and grabbed me, put me in the elevator forcibly, took me upstairs, put me in a solitary padded room. I was in there for all of about a half hour to an hour. Then they allowed me out, it showed me my room and allowed me out. This was on the 6th floor, not the 7th floor, I believe. I was there for a day or two, then they moved me back to the place I was before on the 7th floor, where it's co-ed, but not in the sleeping area, but in the communal area. I refused to take medication once again. After a few days, they did force medication protocol again, and I went through the same situation where I said I hate needles and let them inject me in the buttocks again. After this, I did start taking the medication, mainly because they gave me a wafer-like version of my medication that melts on your tongue so that they could watch that I was taking the medication. So I was on the Risperdal. At this point, I believe it was 6 milligrams maybe that they put me on. And I had many meetings with the doctor. I would interview them. I had a list of questions I had written out. I had another hearing, a 302 hearing, where my brother actually puts on record that I said I might have to pistol duel him in New Orleans. That's on the record, recorded by the hearing officer. I believe my 302 was escalated to a 304 or something. It's a different number in every state, so, you know, California has a different code section number that is in their mental health law in their state. And these laws, these 302 laws and things, I believe they came about after Vietnam, when all these soldiers were coming home with PTSD and mental health issues, and they wanted to keep them locked up in mental facilities. So they passed this whole barrage of mental health law in every individual state in the 70s to keep protesters, to keep Vietnam era military people locked up in mental hospitals. They're having illegal hearings on private property, and it's illegal. It's a sham. It keeps people locked away, and I don't agree with it. And that's a lot of what my conversations with the medical physicians were. I also brought up in the conference room where we would have our meetings with the doctor, the social worker, and another person, that there was an old intercom system in the room with a button next to it and a speaker microphone thing. I tried to get the physician to acknowledge that that could be a listening device. He did not acknowledge it. I said, how are we supposed to even get on the same page with anything if you can't acknowledge that that could be a listening device? So I was trying to draw common ground with the physician, social worker, and whatnot. The doctor when I got escalated to a 304 or whatever, it became apparent that I was going to be released to a long-term facility that reintroduces me back into the public. So that's what happened after about a month and a half to 2 months in Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic. I was transferred via ambulance to a place near Wilkinsburg neighborhood near Pittsburgh, right near a magistrate's office. It's an old hospital, had a helipad that's not used anymore. And this long-term facility had 2 long hallways. In Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic, there were no cameras in there, but there was Wi-Fi routers up in the ceiling. At this new long-term facility, there were 4 cameras. I could see the monitor behind the nurse's station. Very nice people working there. I was able to use the telephone, call my grandma. There was a couple different, there was a meal room, there was a TV room, and then we had individual rooms. It was like a hotel room with your own shower and bathroom in it, in each room. You were able to have visitors and be in the room by yourself with them, with the door cracked. They could come in and check on you at any time. I spent a lot of time pacing the hallways. We were allowed out for a walk once a day, and then there was a step down where you were allowed more freedom as time went on to go out with groups to hike in the park, to go to the library. There's also computers in the facility that you could use to access the internet. You had a certain amount of time you were allowed each day. So I created some files and documents on those computers that are at that facility. I don't know if they're still on there or not. I also looked up the patent number for the strap-down device, and I tried to show the physician that administered that facility, a Dr. Rebecca Roma, my proof that this patent number is not connected to that device, that there's some kind of fraud going on at the patent office amongst pharmaceutical companies. Segufix, the company, which also makes gynecological equipment. She said I was being delusional, paranoid, and whatnot. I also told her about how Johnson & Johnson, Janssen Pharmaceuticals, makes direct payments to physicians. She said, I thought they just made baby powder, blah, blah, blah. What I did avoid was looking into Dr. Roma on the database to see if she took direct payments from pharmaceutical companies. Even after I was allowed to go to the Carnegie Library in Squirrel Hill, I still didn't check the database then. I was worried that if she could figure out that I used her computer or used computers while I was under her care to check into her direct payments, and she was guilty of taking them, that she would keep me in the facility longer or put me in a permanent mental hospital. She also was pushing for me to be on an injectable form of Risperdal, long-acting, lasts 30 days per injection. She wanted me on an injectable dose. I said I wanted to continue to take the oral dose, and later confirming with my physician, Dr. Gannon, it is useful to take that dose every evening to help me sleep, because of the wireless waves create a manic stage in me that allows me to that makes me not sleep. This Risperdal is like a sedative that helps me sleep. So I did, after I got out, look into Dr. Roma. She did take $150,000 every year for the past 4 years before 2017 from Janssen Pharmaceuticals. I also checked the Sunshine Act website, which shows all pharmaceutical payments to physicians by the federal government, and in total she took nearly $450,000 per year for the previous 3 or 4 years from pharmaceutical companies. I don't know if that was to push injectable forms of Risperdal. I don't know what that was for, because I'm sure she got a decent salary through the county to administer, I believe, 4 facilities she administered. She got a decent salary for that, and then she also was taking money from pharmaceutical companies. So I ended up under direct care of a physician that was on the take from pharmaceutical companies. This would, of course, make me paranoid, make me think I did not need to be on. Sorry, the screensaver came on. Made me think that I did not need to be on Risperdal, which led me to later, after I got out, after 3 months in that facility, a few months after being out of there, I went off the medication again, which led to my final hospitalization. Some things I observed while in this facility: there was a man who was about Vietnam era. I believe he was a veteran. His name was Brian, and he would bust into a conversation out of nowhere, out of a dead silence, as if he was picking up radio signals like a wireless conversation, and he would keep a conversation going. And this is what I mean. This is why I think psychologists should check into mental hospitals to observe patients from the inside, instead of just meeting with them for 5 minutes, 5 or 10 minutes a piece each day. Even if they are meeting for a day, you don't observe these symptoms. If you observe the symptoms, you realize and can draw the conclusions between wireless waves affecting some people and causing mental illness. This is the most astute point that I had, was Brian, who would have conversations as if he was as if he was on the other end of a wireless phone. I could only imagine that he might have been one of the people who carried the large radio packs around Vietnam, and this was how he was. So that was that facility. When I was allowed freedom, eventually towards the very end, you're allowed to leave the facility on your own for an hour. I chose to use that time on one of the occasions to visit the CVS, Walgreens, and Rite Aid near the facility. I went up to the pharmacy in each one because I believe the voice recognition software was out there operating on the internet. The supercomputers were tracking my voice and cross-referencing things for me. And that, so I asked if they had Pervitin, which is the German word for methamphetamine. I learned this from listening to the radio in Western Psychiatric Institute and Clinic from an NPR episode. So I registered my voice in all 3 of the major pharmacy systems so that they're out there cross-referencing the ingredients to make methamphetamine. And I believe that if I were given a position of power like director of the NSA and was in one of these situation room, computer monitor, mission control type rooms, I believe the supercomputers would project their findings, and we could take a lot of criminals, and especially white-collar criminals, off the streets and get them and have enough evidence to arrest them. But this is all delusional stuff in my head. So one thing's for sure, probably if I was in a position of power like that, there's probably a network of hackers that would produce all of the evidence they've gathered on white-collar criminals and report it to my agency, and we could really clean up a lot of things, because they would trust me to act on that information instead of hiding it like the current leaders are doing every day. So that was that facility. My wife visited, my parents visited. Eventually, after 3 months of good behavior, I was allowed out of there. They helped me, a person at that facility helped me get on Social Security disability. He also told me that I should be good doing odd jobs without and still be able to collect disability. So he kind of told a mentally ill person that it was fine to work for cash under the table. At least that's how I took it. So I got out, I was on disability, and I was trying to open a gallery in my garage when I received the call that I would be receiving Social Security disability. I used the lump sum of back pay from that to renovate my living room and dining room. My dad helped, and then after August of that year, around August of 2017, I tapered off the medication again. And I operated fine until around January of 2018, around the holiday, a little after the holidays. I started to slip into psychosis again at certain points. I was very rude to my wife, believed I wanted a divorce again. And so for 2 or 3 months leading up to May, to Memorial Day, I was experiencing symptoms of psychosis. Whether it's from satellites or wireless waves, that remains to be seen. But that leads up to my final hospitalization. I'll go into that in the next segment. Thanks for watching, and join me next time.